Welcome back, everybody, to another Three Kingdoms DLC, Introduction to one of the Three Kingdoms civilizations. Last time we took a look at the upcoming Shu civilization, went through all of their bonuses, tech tree, and tested out their unique units and bonuses and all that. This video is going to be all about the Wei. So the Wei are the northernmost of the Three Kingdoms. They were Cao Cao's kingdom, and were in many ways seen as like the successors to the Han Empire and all that stuff. So interestingly, these guys are a cavalry civilization. And as I mentioned in the Shu video, each of the Three Kingdoms focuses on a different unit archetype, much like Britons, Franks, and Celts focused on archers, cavalry, and infantry back in Age of Kings. The Wei are going to be the Cav and to a lesser extent Cav Archer Civ, which I guess makes them a bit different than Franks, but still similar idea. So yes, I know there's all the Three Kingdoms drama, people have a lot of opinions about them being in ranked, but this video, we're going to sort of forego the drama and just take a look at the Wei and just see how they interact as a regular AoE2 civilization and see where they are best going to be performing. So if you are interested in the civilization or have an opinion about having Cao Cao in a multiplayer game, definitely leave a like on the video. Of course, mention in the comments what you are most interested or worried about with this civilization, and subscribe to the channel for tons more content. The DLC is indeed getting closer. It is, 8 days away as I'm recording this? So there'll be plenty of campaign content, especially after the DLC is released. But that aside, let's take a look at the Wei. Or I should say, rather, this is the Wei civilization. Okay, I promise I'm not going to make any more Wei jokes. Okay, that's not a promise I know I can keep. Let's get into this. Alrighty, so as I mentioned, the Wei are a cavalry civilization, and indeed very, very good at cavalry. They do have an eco bonus, as do all of the Three Kingdom civs, and theirs is receive 1 free villager for each mill, lumber, and mining camp technology researched. It's a mostly straightforward bonus, but there are some small quirks to it that are worth covering in a bit of testing. It's a decent bonus. You can think about it in similar vein to the Bengali bonus, but it's worse than the Bengalis because Bengalis get 2 villagers as soon as you hit feudal age for no cost whatsoever. Sure, you might be able to research double bitaxe and horse collar shortly after reaching feudal age, but it's still worse than Bengalis. It's pretty rare to research gold mining or stone mining in the feudal age, or at the very least, not until you're on your way up to castle age. And of course, it has a hard limit of 8, which is the number of techs available to the civilization from all the drop-off sites. So it's like a decent bonus, but certainly not one that's going to be over the top. In a lot of ways, that is reminiscent of the Shu and their lumberjack bonus. But that'll get you through most games for sure. Their main military boost is that the Heiguan Cavalry and Xianbei Raider have plus 15 and 30% HP and Castle and Imperial Age. The Heiguan Cavalry is their regional cavalry unit that the Wei do exceptionally well. It is basically a knight. And the Xianbei Raider is actually a unique unit, which is kind of weird that you have a bonus that applies to your unique unit when you could literally just adjust the HP accordingly and just have the bonus only apply to the Heiguan Cavalry. But what do I know, guys? The Xianbei Raider is a Cav Archer, and we'll do plenty of comparisons between that unit and the CA. Still, very solid bonus. Extra HP bonuses are almost always very helpful, especially for melee units. Look at the Franks with their extra HP for their Cav, or Mongols with the extra HP for their Cav. And the Xianbei Raider is, the Xianbei Raider has a very different profile of stats compared to a Cav Archer, so again, we'll get into that in a little bit. And then their last Civ bonus is that Traction Trebuchets and Lochuans cost minus 25%. Very straightforward. You have the worst traction trebuchets of the Three Kingdom civs, but at the very least they are nice and cheap, which is always great for an expensive unit. And then Lochuans, the civ's pretty bad on the water anyway, as we'll get to in a second, so I don't think that's going to matter too much. Their team bonus is Cavalry gain plus 2 attack versus siege weapons. This can situationally be pretty useful and result in 1 fewer hit to kill a siege weapon with various cavalry units. So we'll get to that testing in just a little bit. But yeah, good solid team bonus there for sure. Your unique units and hero are the Tiger Cavalry, which is a cavalry that is your castle unique unit. It is very, very strong, as we'll get to later. You have the Xianbei Raider, which is a Cav Archer. You build it from the archery range, as I mentioned. And then your hero is Cao Cao, of course, the most famous hero of this time. Your unique techs are Tunshin? Regardless of the pronunciation, soldiers passively produce food, so we'll go ahead and show you guys how exactly that is going to work. And your Imperial Age unique tech is Mingguang Armor. Mounted units gain plus 4 melee armor. So basically the same thing as Frontier Guards, except it applies to slightly different units. Still very, very powerful, and we'll get into that in a little bit as well. So those are the bonuses of the way. It's a very straightforward civilization in terms of, okay, you have a decent eco, you do cav well, you have cav archers as a solid option if your opponent is making a lot of pikemen or whatever. Do those units and you'll probably find some success. You can finish off buildings with cheap traction trebuchets in the Imperial Age. Now, of course, you can't really think about the Civ bonuses alone. You have to look up at them in the context of the tech tree, and that's what we're going to do now. Alright, so we are in the tech tree, and of course, as always, I'm going to start with the blacksmith. So it looks kind of bad missing both plate mail armor and plate barding armor in the Imperial Age, but remember, you have kind of the weird dynamic where your units, your cav units, are going to be missing 2 pierce armor, but having essentially 3 extra melee armor to make up for missing the one from plate barding armor. So it's just kind of a different dynamic with your cavalry as the game goes on, so we'll go ahead and, of course, test that later. You already did, actually, the Haeguang cavalry testing in the video I did on that unit. So be sure to check that out if you have not seen it yet, because the Haeguang cavalry is a very important part of the Wei civilization. And the missing plate mail armor, yeah, the Civ just doesn't do infantry that well, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So even though the Shu are the archer Civ of the Three Kingdoms, the Wei actually have a pretty solid archery range. You have a decent eco bonus, you've got archers with thumb ring all the way through mid-game, which can be helpful. You have fully upgraded elite skirmishers, which can be quite nice. And it looks like there's a lot of X's here, but the Xianbei Raider is basically a cheaper cav archer, although the wood cost is a lot higher. So this is basically just your late-game cav archer unit. Yeah, you don't get hand cannoneers, but of course, 3rd century, not likely going to be getting gunpowder. And yeah, I mean, missing Arbalest is a bit of a bummer, but you have your Xianbei Raiders, which are fully upgraded and get that extra melee armor from Mingguang armor. So the Xianbei Raiders are certainly going to be, I think, one of the cornerstones of your civilization, and despite all of the X's here in the tech tree, it's a very solid archery range. Infantry, though, not so great. You don't have champions, which is more relevant now than ever, and missing gambesons, of course, means that your swordsman play is not going to be super exciting. You do have halberdiers, which is very important, even for a cav civ, especially against camels, because it's the typical thing you do as a cav civ against a camel civ is mix in those pikemen against the camels, and then the combination of knight plus pikemen or Haeguang cav plus pikemen is usually one of the more viable ways of countering camels. You do miss the last armor upgrade, which isn't ideal, but at the very least, you have squires, and you have all the attack upgrades, so it's far from the worst halbs in the world. This will at least be serviceable. Of course, cavalry is a big strength of the civilization, so you have your heavy Haeguang cavalry, you've got bloodlines and husbandry, you've got all the way up to hussar, but you missed that last armor upgrade, so your hussars have, again, that sort of weird dynamic in the late game, where they have 3 extra melee armor over a generic civ, but -2 pierce armor. That said, the star of your show in the late game is going to be the Tiger Cav unique unit, which we'll get to in a moment. Still, you have all of these options here. At the Siege Workshop, note that you do not have Siege Engineers. You do have Siege Rams, though, and that can certainly be helpful against all those buildings. Onagers are there if you need them, same with Heavy Scorpions. And then you have your Traction Trebuchets, which are at least very cheap. So, I mean, it'll get the job done, but certainly not a very exciting Siege Workshop for sure. The Navy is pretty bad. You have Galleon with Bracer, so I mean, that's at least something, but you miss both Drydock and Shipwright, which isn't ideal. You miss Heavy Demo, which isn't ideal. You got Fast Fire Ships, which are there. You have the cheap Lo Schwans. I mean, it'll get the job done, but it's not like you're ever going to pick the Civ on water maps. Even on hybrid maps, there are going to be better options out there. At the University, again, this Civ is fairly average. You have keeps, but no arrow slits. Don't have siege engineers, as I said. No architecture. You do have hoarding, so at least, you know, your castles are still pretty tanky. And you have some of the other basics there. Fortified wall can help keep you alive. Of course, the tower defense in the mid-game is also another option. Treadmill crane's always nice to have in the late game. Again, it's good, not super exciting. It'll get the job done. Of course, no trebuchets for the Three Kingdoms civilizations. You have your hero unit instead, which is Cao Cao, which we'll cover later. And the Tiger Cavalry, just as a little bit of an intro. It's basically if a Huskarl was on a horse, but also had the stats of a paladin. Yeah, we'll get to that later. Alright, and here at the monastery, it's not very good. You have Sanctity, block printing, and Theocracy, which, like, can help you out if needed if you're up against a lot of, you know, non-siege strong late game units. But, yeah, missing Redemption and Tonement's pretty bad. Not even Herbal Medicine, and then no Heresy for your expensive cav units is all not ideal, but, yeah, it's there. And of course, your actual tech tree for the all the eco upgrades is very relevant because you get a villager for each one researched. Note that you do not have gold shaft mining or two-man saw. So you only have, as I mentioned earlier, 8 available upgrades. If I can count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, I can count! Hooray! So yeah, you can get up to 8 villagers from all of these different eco upgrades. And then, like, as far as it goes, missing gold shaft mining isn't ideal, not the end of the world. Missing two-man saw, same thing. I mean, it's there. It'll do the job. Guilds is a bit of a sad miss in late game, but again, not the end of the world. So overall, the theme of this tech tree is, it's okay, it's not exceptional. You obviously have your Cav, which you do super well. You have your Cav Archer play, which is also very good, but other than that, everything else is basically middling to mediocre. Now, of course, the part of the video you guys actually want to see, the testing of the bonuses and units, so let's get into that. Okay, so first, the eco bonus. Like I said, receive 1 free villager for each mill, lumber, and mining camp tech researched. It seems very straightforward, but keep in mind, like, okay, here we'll research horse collar. My first question when I read the bonus is, okay, where does the villager actually appear? Does it appear next to the drop-off site that is researching the upgrade, or does it appear at your town center? And as you can see, it appears at your town center. And this is the first town center built. Interestingly enough, if I delete my TC here, and I have no other TCs on the map, if I research another eco upgrade, we'll research double bit axe. And with double bit axe coming in, you don't get a villager anywhere. And even if you build the TC afterwards, yeah, even if you build the TC afterwards, you don't get the villager. So you need a TC for this bonus to work. So if you were a 0 TC gamer, you might want to skip on those eco upgrades. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a good bonus. It's an eco bonus that'll get the job done, but certainly does not put you among the very best eco civs in the game. Alright, the next bonus is, of course, the HP bonus, and that is going to be plus 15% extra HP in Castle Age, and then 30% in the Imperial Age. Now, all of your units that are affected here, the Heiguan Cavalry and the Xianbei Raider, are fairly low HP anyway, so the actual number increase isn't that big. So in the Castle Age here, you can see we get 9 more HP than another civilization's Heiguan Cavalry, so that is pretty nice. Get that 69 HP, but still, you know, it's a good bonus, right? Extra HP is always nice to have. It's going to help you versus literally everything. And then for the Xianbei Raider, it's pretty weird because it's a unique unit. So it's not like any other civ can get Xianbei Raiders in the first place, so it's like, might as well just make the Xianbei Raider have 35 HP in the Castle Age. But what do I know, man? Note that the Xianbei Raider has 35 HP in the Castle Age. And if we research the Imperial Age, now our regular Heiguan Cavalry are going to get another 9 HP for 78 total. Keep in mind that you do have bloodlines. Your heavy Heiguan Cavalry in late game are going to max out at 118 HP, which remember is 2 less than a knight with bloodlines. So you get that extra armor with the heavy Heiguan Cavalry over a Cavalier, 2 extra melee armor, 1 extra pierce armor, which is certainly a big deal. And you don't even have an attack increase in the late game except versus infantry. And then in the late game, the Xianbei Raider has 40 HP. Not that there's another point of comparison for this bonus to matter with, but hey, keep in mind you got 40 HP before bloodlines in the late game. So yeah, that's the bonus. It's good. It'll help you out. Nothing too flashy. Last Civ bonus is that the Traction Trebs and the Lochuans, which are your Cannon Galleon replacements, cost minus 25%. Very straightforward. It's 131 wood and 158 gold for a Wei Traction Trebuchet, whereas for another civilization, it is 175 wood and 210 gold. And then for the Lochuans, it is 188 wood and 169 gold for the Lochuans with the Wei, which is a very sizable discount because it is the most expensive unit in the game. 250 wood, 225 for the regular Lochuan, so already you are getting a huge amount of resources deducted with this bonus. So even though they are missing a lot of upgrades and the quality isn't super high, they are at least very cheap and spammable. And it's not like Siege is a focal point of this civ anyway. You're mostly just going to be using these Traction Trebuchets as anti-building or anti-bombard cannon units, so getting them out cheaper is certainly very helpful. Alrighty, moving on now to the final bonus, Cavalry gain +2 attack versus siege weapons. There's a lot of different combinations of cavalry attack out there, especially because you tend to delay the attack upgrades relative to the armor upgrades when going for any type of melee cavalry. So it's not like we can test every situation, but we can still give it a little bit of a go here and test between the basic siege units in Castle and Imperial Age. So this is with post-Castle Age upgrades. I know, like I said, you tend to delay iron casting a bit, but still, keep it in mind. Note that this does not apply to the Xianbei Raider. You can see it does not get any bonus damage versus siege weapons, so it's just your Light Cav, your Heiguan Cavalry, and your Tiger Cavalry unique unit. So here we have a more generic civilization, same upgrades, and we'll see if this changes the kits to kill. And obviously they're up against mangonels. For some reason, they're not attacking in the exact same time. Looks like that is the same number of hits. It is a couple, or at least one hit sooner there for the light cavalry. I don't even know why I have the camel here. You don't get camels with the civ, whatever. It will benefit from the bonus, though. The team bonus. But yeah, considering siege weapons tend to have HPs in multiples of at least 5, note that with light cav especially, getting over that 10 damage threshold is going to be really nice, as it almost guarantees that you get the kill on a mangonel or a scorpion even in one fewer hit. Alright, battering rams have a lot of HP, so this might have a bit of a more pronounced impact here. Okay, same amount of hits to kill there for the Haegwang Cav, but definitely a couple hits sooner for the Light Cav. So Light Cav definitely seem to be the biggest beneficiaries of this, as they do have the lowest base attack, which makes sense. Scorpions, 40 HP. As we can imagine, this should only impact the Light Cav. Yeah, one hit sooner there for the Light Cav for the Wei. Alrighty, now in the Imperial Age against these Siege Onagers. Seems pretty similar, except for the Hussar. Again, definitely the biggest beneficiary there. Note that I can't actually get a heavy Haegwang Cavalry, because, I don't know, that the game doesn't like it when I try and have a Civ with Paladins and heavy Haegwang Cavalry, because that civilization doesn't actually exist. Haha, I found a workaround. I just gave this regular Haegwang Cavalry 1 extra attack to reflect the increase with the heavy version. Anyway, we have Siege Rams now. Not that it would have made a difference for the last unit, but it probably would make a difference for the Siege Rams since they have so much HP. Yeah, it actually does make a difference there for the heavy Haegwang Cav versus Siege, and a very noticeable difference there for the Hussars. Alright, heavy Scorpions. Yeah, the lower HP of the heavy Scorpion means that these units kill in the same number of hits, but it's still 1 hit fewer here for the Hussar line. And remember that this is a team bonus, so this is helping everybody on your team better deal with siege weapons, again, especially with Hussars. Alright, Bombard Cannons, they do have the 2 melee armor and 80 HP, so I imagine this actually would be a bit more relevant. Yep. And also, yep. Yeah, so Bombard Cannon's definitely going to be helped out there by the team bonus. Paladins, not so much, but your Haegwang Cav and allied Haegwang Cav, and then the Hussars as well. And the Camels, I'm sure, also are helping out. Camels actually the most so would be helped out by this because of their low base attack relative to all of the other units. I mean, I guess the heavy Camels have the same attack as a Hussar, but a slightly slower reload time. So anything that's applicable to the Hussar is also true for the Camel. Anyway, last siege weapon, trebuchets. Ornlu, you're actually missing Hofnitsa and traction trebuchets? Yeah, I don't want to be here all day. Alright, trebs. Yep, 1 hit sooner there for the Haegwang Cav and this Tiger Cav, and several hits sooner there for the Hussar. So, concluding thoughts on this team bonus, it's a good one. It doesn't help you in every situation with every Cav unit, but there are certainly going to be a lot of situations where it does impact it, especially with these lower base attack Cav units, like the Hussar and Camel, as well as against high HP siege units like trebuchets and rams. So good solid team bonus for sure. And I think that's like the theme of the Wei bonuses. Like, they're good, they're solid, they're not going to knock your socks off, but they're good. Like, I can already tell you guys that this Civ is going to be viable. I don't know if it's going to be a top pick anywhere, but it is going to be viable. Alrighty, so now moving on to the unique text. We have Tunxian? Something like that. Soldiers passively produce food. That is a very unhelpful wording as to what this actually does. So before we see the exact values, I first want to know what counts as a soldier. Alright, so I'm just going to go out on a limb and just assume that this does apply to anything that comes out of a barracks, archery range, or stable, as well as your unique unit. But let's see if this applies to monks. So let's make several monks here and see if our food count goes up. Nope. Okay, so it does not apply to monks. Yeah, just want to make sure the bonus is working. Yeah, you can see that when I made my Tiger Cavalry, the food count is going up. Alright, so we can keep that in mind. Does this apply to siege weapons? No. I imagine it's just stuff that comes out of a barracks, archery range, or stable, and then, your unique units. Does it apply to Cao Cao? Does Cao Cao give food back to his people? Tragic. What a jerk. Alright, and does this apply to ships? Actually, ships generating food in late game would be insane. No, it does not apply to ships, so yeah. Stuff that comes out of a barracks, archery range, or stable, and then your unique unit. No monks, no siege, no ships. Basically, what you would expect. Now, let's see the actual values in action. Alrighty guys, so to get an idea of how much you're getting from Tunxian, what we're going to do is as soon as I click on this castle, the upgrade will research, and then after 10 minutes of game time, all of these units are going to be deleted. So then we can kind of work backwards from there. I could have just tested this with one unit, but I kind of wanted to get an idea of just how much food it's looking like we're going to be getting in a game. 100 units is definitely a bit more than you get most of the time, but it's going to give us a nice round number. And you can see here that in the late game, your food will be trickling up pretty nice. I mean, this is like having several Khmer farmers going at it. So we'll see how much food we get in 10 minutes. And then all of these guys are going to die all at once. It's going to be very sad. I will take this opportunity to get more coffee. Oh, feels bad, man. So, I totally didn't accidentally mute myself when going to get coffee, come back, record the rest of the video, which was over an hour of recording, only to realize my mic was muted the whole time. Now I have to re-record everything again. Good thing I'm a veteran YouTuber of over 1,300 videos. Anyway, we'll just go ahead and test everything again, I guess. All right, so 1197 food collected. So if we do math, which with me is always a terrifying prospect, get 1197, which is the exact number I got before. Divide that by 100 units. You get, in 10 minutes, each unit generated 11.97 food. And if we divide that by 10 again, you get 1.197 food per minute per unit. So, generating about 1.2 food per minute, how does that compare to a villager? Well, as this is a pretty late game upgrade, we can compare it to vills with handcart. And I'll put up the chart I used from the Khitans video back up on screen now, and you can see that if you look at Byzantines, Vikings, and then especially Khmer, they're all at around that 26-ish food per minute per villager area. So if we take Khmer, because this is most akin to a Khmer farmer, we take 25.93 and then divide that by 1.19, we get around 21, close to 22 military units will give you one Khmer farmer. Again, assuming my math is right, which is always a rarity. But in theory, that should mean, okay, you have an army of, say, 80 units in the late game, which is pretty reasonable. You're getting 4 Khmer farmers just working on constantly giving you that extra food. So that's a nice boost. But if we consider the fact that the upgrade itself costs 250 food already, plus the 300 gold, it's not like the greatest thing in the world. But would you take an upgrade that gives you 4 Khmer farmers in the late game without having to do anything else? Yeah, certainly. But it's going to be a good but not amazing upgrade. I totally also didn't have to completely remake this scenario from scratch. Definitely not me. And then I went back to select a unit, and my game crashed. So, guys, this video, it's just going swimmingly. Alrighty, no crashing. So the other unique tech, of course, the Imperial Age unique tech here for the Wei is going to be Mingguang armor, 600 food, 450 gold, mounted units gain +4 melee armor. So this is actually a really nice price for the effect. We can easily compare it to Frontier Guards, which is +4 melee armor, but for 2 different units. 800 food, 700 gold for that one, so you are getting a nice discounted price, especially as your mounted units are always going to be useful, whereas for Gujaras, it's camels you use a lot, elephant archers not so much. Anyway, mounted units +4 armor. It's very straightforward, thankfully. What does it affect? And that is going to be the Scout Line, the Tiger Cavalry, the Xianbei Raider, and the Heguan Cavalry. Now, keep in mind that you do not have the last armor upgrade for Cavalry, but you do for archers. So your Xianbei Raiders end up with a lot of armor, whereas for the regular, stable units, plus your unique unit, you get +3 melee armor over a generic Civ, but -2 pierce armor. So we already did the testing for the Heguan Cavalry in its own video. So just to summarize that, basically, you are worse against ranged units in the late game with the Heguan Cavalry, but you're very, very good against melee units, as you end up with 10 melee armor. The Tiger Cavalry and Xianbei Raiders I'll cover in their own respective sections, so this just leaves the Hussar left for the Wei, which is going to get that extra melee armor, but less pierce armor, so let's just see how these guys are going to perform with a few tests. Alrighty, so now we have returned to our beloved bamboo testing enclosures. So here we have some Spanish Hussars, so fully upgraded but generic, versus our Wei Hussars that are getting a net +3 melee armor. Now, naturally, we expect the Wei to win, but let's just illustrate just how good this upgrade is, especially against a low attack unit like a Hussar, where the increase in melee armor is obviously going to be the biggest percentage difference in hits to kill. I mean, just look at this, guys. It is insane versus other Hussars, so this is a pretty common matchup in the late game. There we go. We lost one Hussar. Obviously, a lot of them have taken plenty of damage, but considering it's the same unit with the same amount of resources spent, yeah, this upgrade's pretty darn bonkers against Hussars. Now, let's compare them to regular Hussars against several other unit types. Well, actually, first, let's double-check against what currently exist in the game as the best Hussars, and that is the Winged Hussars of Poles. I mean, if you're beating these Pole Hussars in late game as the Wei, that's when there's definitely going to be a problem. Remember, the Polish Hussars have, on top of the trample damage, you have 5 extra HP, 2 extra attack, and 1 melee armor of their own. And as you can see, it's not by an enormous margin, but the Polish Winged Hussars still win, even in melee combat. So that's not too bad. They are, of course, going to be some of the best Hussars for melee fights, but notably not better than the best Civ right now. As we are, of course, testing Hussars, we're going to test versus the other trash units, as, like I said, those are the most common matchups in the late game for these units. Now, obviously the Halbs are going to win this fight, because that's what they're supposed to do, and the plus 32 bonus damage you get, 3 isn't going to make a big difference there, and you can see that, indeed, the Halberdiers, they don't really care about 3 extra armor. The units are performing about the same between the 2 different unit types, or the 2 different Hussar variations. Now, Skirmishers are going to be an interesting one, because remember, lacking plus 4 defense is huge in this regard, because generic Hussars get 6 Pierce Armor versus 7 Skirmisher attacks, so 1 damage taken by Hussars normally, but with only 4 Pierce Armor, you're actually taking 3 damage a hit, to triple the damage from Skirmishers. Now, obviously, Hussars are, generally speaking, extremely good versus Skirmishers. Let's just see how much worse the Wei are doing than the Spanish or Saracens are. Same thing. And as you can see, 15 units left, so I lost 5 Hussars there, whereas the Spanish player lost 1. And even then, most of them are still pretty high in HP, whereas I have a few that are pretty close to death on my end. So, as you can see, yes, you crush other Hussars, at least most other Hussars with the Wei, but the downside is that you perform a lot worse versus Skirmishers and basically the same versus Halberdiers. So it's much less of a bonus for the Hussars than it is a trade-off. For instance, if we take these Arbalests here, we have 25 Arbs to the 20 Hussars. This should be even more pronounced, where the high rate of fire and higher base attack is going to just matter, I think, that much more. And I say I think when I've literally done these tests like a couple hours ago. I'm a cheater, what can I say? So as you can see, huge difference. On the one hand, for our part, we lost with our Wei Hussars, and this is with 0 micro involved. If the Arbs are like focus firing and shooting back, like it's going to be even worse. But yeah, we straight up lost to the Arbs, whereas the generic Hussars were able to win with almost half their number rating. I mean, slightly more than half their number, less than half HP. So this is the same thing's going to hold true with Cav Archers. So again, we're looking at something that's much more in the land of a trade-off than something that's like actually good. Alright, so let's see how the difference is going to look versus Paladins, which obviously have much higher attack than Hussars and more HP. So is that 3 melee armor going to be making much of a difference? Again, the Paladins are almost certainly going to win the fight, it's just going to be a matter of how much. And as you can see, well, it doesn't make much of a difference. 7 out of 11 Paladins survived, with a lot of them injured, and 7 out of 11 Paladins survived with maybe slightly more HP left for this Paladin set, but it's not going to make an enormous difference versus Paladins. And we'll do one more test, and we'll do it against Champions, who have the same attack as Paladins now, but obviously much less HP. Alright, so, versus 22 Champions. Remember, again, Champions are good against Hussars. And I didn't even mention rating. Obviously, buildings deal pierce damage, so your Hussars as the Wei are going to be much worse against any sort of defense. Town centers, towers, castles, anything like that. So once again, 11 champions are left, 13 champions are left. You definitely do a little bit better here as the Wei, but is it significant? Not so much. So insofar as it affects your generic unit, the Hussar, what can we say of Mingguang armor? I mean, it's insane in Hussar v Hussar wars. It doesn't help you versus a lot of anything else. Oh, I forgot to show you guys camels. I guess I can show you that. It's basically the same result, though. Alright, 15 camels. When I did this test earlier, it really didn't make much of a difference as the camels. Once again, 18 bonus damage versus Hussars. The 3 extra armor is not that impactful. And indeed, 13 camels left, 12 camels left. HP distribution is a little bit different. It really doesn't matter that much. So, for Hussars in particular, yes, it's situationally good, but would you rather have generic Hussars most of the time? Yeah, probably. As although Hussar v Hussar is pretty frequent, it's not the only thing in late game, and especially raiding ability is so important for Hussars. Still, it does affect 2 other units, and those are going to be your unique units, which we will go into now. Alright, we'll start at the castle with the Tiger Cavalry. You can see it costs 60 food and 80 gold, which is very slightly more expensive than a knight, which is 60 food and 75 gold. And here it says, Wei unique cavalry that gains HP and attack when defeating enemy military. Exceptionally strong versus ranged soldiers, weak versus the spearman line. Also, its elite upgrade is fairly expensive at 1,000 food and 800 gold. So before we look at how their unique gimmick works, let's just do a side-by-side comparison to its most relevant comparisons, the Heiguan Cavalry, which is your main stable unit here for the way, and then the regular Knight line. So you can see here, when it comes to HP, 115 in Castle Age for the Tiger Cav, 69 for the Heiguan Cavalry, and 100 for the Knight. So more HP than either of these units. It also has 11 attack, same as the Heiguan Cavalry, and 1 more than a Knight. When it comes to armor, basically you take the Knight armor, but put it entirely in Pierce armor. You can see 4 Pierce armor for the Tiger Cavalry, which is a lot. That's like Skirmisher Pierce armor. But you have no melee armor by comparison. Then you have the Heiguan Cavalry here, which has 4-3 armor to help mitigate its low HP. Attack speed is also slightly slower for the Tiger Cavalry at 1.9 instead of 1.8. 1.9 is basically the default attack speed for most Cav unique units, so the Tiger Cavalry here is no exception. And at 1.35, the movement speed is exactly the same across all 3 units. Now, keep in mind that the Heiguan Cavalry and the Knight deal no bonus damage versus anything, unless it's, like through this team bonus, but normally, no. The Tiger Cavalry, however, gets 6 bonus damage versus archers. So I think I mentioned earlier that it's basically like a Huskarl on a horse. Yeah, 6 bonus damage is a lot versus archers when you already have 11 attacks, so 17 attack versus archers is pretty wild. Now, when it comes to its unique gimmick, what does it mean by gain HP and attack? Well, I mean, that concept is quite straightforward, but what exactly is going on? So just to show you guys, it does not work against buildings. Just give this guy a second. He'll take that outpost down in his own good time. All right. So 115 HP, 11 attack, and still 115 HP and 11 attack. So does not work with buildings. Not that you're really going to be using these guys that much versus buildings. But how about these Karambits here? So remember, 115 HP and 11 attack. You take down 1 Karambit, you get 1 attack and 10 HP. Now this will stack up to 4 times. And this is kind of one of the reasons I'm worried about the unit, is less about the base stats and more the fact that it's really snowbally. Because this works, guys, against every single unit. You can see that in Castle Age, and I'll just show you guys that it does not stack more than 4. That is the limit. But still, 15 attack and 155 HP on a Castle Age unit that also gets bonus damage versus archers is pretty wild. So I am a little concerned about these guys. That said, how about the Imperial Age? So again, keeping in mind that the elite upgrade is quite expensive at 1,000 food and 800 gold, the elite Tiger Cavalry has 13 base attack as opposed to the 11 of the Castle Age variant, so plus 2. It also has 130 HP compared to what is 115 normally for the Tiger Cavalry, so you get 15 more HP, not the biggest jump in the world. You get 1 more Pierce Armor, so 5 Pierce Armor to 4. You also get 1 more bonus damage against archers, 7 compared to 6. And then your attack speed and movement speed are the exact same. So it's a nice little stat increase, but nothing too gigantic. And if we compare it to the heavy Heiguan Cav and the Paladin, you can see here that the Tiger Cavalry has more HP than the heavy Heiguan Cavalry, but not by an enormous margin. 12 more HP by base. This is, of course, before Bloodlines. But still, way less than a Paladin. 30 less HP than a Paladin. It also has 1 less attack than a Paladin and 1 more than the heavy Heiguan Cavalry. The armor looks completely different though. 0 melee armor and 5 pierce armor versus 2 melee armor and 3 pierce armor. And then the attack speed and movement speed are the same between the Tiger Cavalry and the Paladin. But again, Paladin deals 0 bonus damage against anything, and the Tiger Cavalry gets 7 bonus damage versus archers. Now, the 5 pierce armor looks insane, but remember that you missed the last armor upgrade, but also have Mingguang armor. So with full upgrades, the Tiger Cavalry ends up with 6-7 armor, 6 melee, 7 pierce armor, which is exactly 1 more melee armor than the Paladin. So 1 more melee armor than a Paladin, which has 5-7, but they both have the same pierce armor. Now, how does the Tiger Cavalry perform in combat? Also, I guess I should mention that its mechanic is exactly the same as the Castle Age version, plus 10 HP and plus 1 attack per unit killed, capping out at 4, 40 HP and 4 attack. Alrighty, back to the testing arena here. So I am going to be comparing it to both the Heiguan Cavalry and the Knight line so that we have a nice generic comparison, but also a more relevant comparison to the Wei in particular. So we're going to start just against the Knights here, doing equal-ish costs. So it's 16 Knights versus 15 Tiger Cavalry versus 17 Heiguan Cavalry. Now, this is going to be a matter versus the Knights. You have 15 extra HP, but 2 less melee armor. And also you have 1 more attack and a slightly slower reload time. Also, you are getting those extra stats as soon as you kill the enemy units. So you can see here, guys, the Tiger Cavalry... if it was just the base stats, then the Tiger Cavalry would lose, and they would lose handily. Now, it's true that the Heiguan Cavalry, I guess, do a little bit better even still. And there is going to be some randomness here, like if the lower HP units are sniped before they can get their extra bonuses, then maybe it's not quite as good, but I'm a little concerned about this unit, because, okay, you win this fight, and then you can just go back and heal up. I guess you don't have herbal medicine, but, you know, you just go back to some monks, heal these guys up, and now the fight, if you would run the exact same fight again with these units, they'd be even stronger than before. And they're relatively fast here, right? The Jaguars have a similar effect, but they only get attack, +1 attack, instead of +1 attack and 10 HP, and also it's a lot harder to keep an infantry unit alive than a cavalry unit. That said, now let's look at these guys versus camels, which should in theory be a counter unit to all these guys. And as you can see, the camels are still doing their job, at least before all of the extra buffs come in. The knights actually end up living the longest here, but if you see who's left, there are 7 camels left, with a few of them very injured. There are 11 camels left here, with several of them very injured, and then there are 6 camels left over here for the knights. So you could say that the knights and the Heiguan Cavalry do about the same, but definitely a little bit worse for the Tiger Cavalry against the camels, so that's at least something. Taking a quick look now at the light cav, on the one hand, they are going to be easier for these Tiger Cavalry to kill, but I still think that the armor is just going to be the best aspect here of the Heiguan Cavalry by comparison. So yes, you obviously win, and you win around as fast with the Heiguan Cavalry as the Tiger Cavalry. The Tiger Cavalry are all still alive, and several of them have gotten a lot of buffs, which is, again, part of my concern for the unit isn't just like, if the initial fights are even like okay, it's just like you go back and get healed, and then you just have an even worse problem than the next fight. And this isn't even showing you guys archers. Alright, so here are the archers. They are fully upgraded as far as Castle Age goes. They are outnumbering the Tiger Cavalry 3-1. I mean, just look at this. It's ridiculous. Talk about a mounted Huskar. I mean, like, you're still going to win with all these units, but it's just a mop-up. You've already won, and now your units are super high charge because they've defeated so many units here in the process. So in Castle Age, it is brutal versus the archers. And now you're looking at Tiger Cavalry that have 17 attack and 175 HP. 2/6 armor. Ugh. Alright, so Longswordsmen cost exactly half as many resources per unit as the Tiger Cavalry. So on the one hand, they're pretty cheap and weak individually, so you can sort of buff up your Tiger Cavalry quite quickly. On the other hand, Tiger Cavalry have no native melee armor, so let's see if there's a significant difference here. Remember that swordsman trade very slightly positively versus the Knight line. The Heiguan Cavalry is doing the best because they have so much melee armor, and as you can see, well, I guess there is some randomness involved. Yeah, the Heiguan Cavalry do the best here, whereas the Tiger Cavalry are not, like, amazing, but they do win. Also, what you can do is you can pick off a few units and, again, run back to your defenses, get healed, and then strike again. Last Castle Age test here versus pikemen. They are going to be a counter to all of these units. Again, you can rack up the kills pretty quickly with the Tiger Cav, but they also just die super fast as well. So you can see here, there's not much daylight between the different heavy Cav units versus pikemen. I guess the Knights even technically survive the longest, but yeah. Pikemen and Camels, guys, are both still very effective counters against these units. Now let's see how, if at all, these dynamics change in the Imperial Age. So you can see here the Tiger Cavalry has a weird-looking armor profile, but it's going to end up just being almost the same as the Paladin, just one more melee armor. But Paladin is also much more expensive to get to, and are, relatively speaking, going to have much, much, much closer or even better stats. I screwed up that test with the Heiguan Cavalry. I gave the wrong person helps. Whatever. The point of comparison here, against Paladins, it's still bad for the Tiger Cavalry. It's still bad for the Heiguan Cavalry. I already showed that in their video. Halbs are still an effective counter. And as you can expect, again, it is going to be the same story for the Camels in Imperial Age as with Castle Age. Units just deal way too much damage. The heavy cav units here are going to be getting very comfortably countered. In fact, Paladins do the best because they just have so much base HP. Still, of course, though, Camels going to be very good here. So in terms of counter units that are supposed to work, they do work. Alrighty, so versus champions, as we can imagine, the Heiguan Cavalry having 10 melee armor is still pretty darn insane. And Paladins just have so much HP, so the Tiger Cavalry should slightly be doing the worst here. Easy cleanup, but I guess the Tiger Cavalry lost the most, maybe? You have 10 Heiguan Cavalry left, you have 8 Tiger Cavalry, so I guess kind of the same, but these guys are very low HP. And then the Paladins probably just did the best. Yeah, they had 11 of their number left, although I guess a lot of theirs were also low HP. Still, again, you're looking at a Paladin that even in the worst fight, before any of these units have attack bonuses, you still win, and you cut them down, and you just heal these guys up, and then they have a lot more stats. All right, versus ARBs, again, we have triple the number of ARBs as we do the Tiger Cavalry, which is going to help mitigate the lack of micro involved here. So 7 Pierce Armor, it's still the same as a Paladin, so it's, relatively speaking, a bit worse than in Castle Age, but still, in terms of just raw damage, the Haeguan Cavalry get mowed down due to the lack of Pierce Armor, and it's just brutal, guys. The Tiger Cavalry are getting super swole, super fast, so even though we lost 6 of them, now the ones that survived, I mean, 190 HP and 21 attack. 6-7 armor. The Paladin's even gonna win here? Yeah, they're gonna win, but versus archers in particular, it's pretty brutal. Alright, last test here will be against enemy Paladins, and the Paladins still should be doing quite well. Now, the Haeguan Cavalry are gonna do even better, because again, 10 melee armor is quite good. But as far as the Tiger Cavalry goes, it's probably going to be a little bit worse than a Paladin due to missing that 30 HP and having 1 fewer attack. And indeed, that is the case. So against other heavy cav, you do want the Haeguan Cav and Imp. So 7 left here of the Haeguan Cavalry, whereas the Paladins won with 8 of their 16 initial numbers remaining. Now, the reason I tested Paladins last is because now we can move on to Cao Cao, the hero unit of the Wei. 500 food, 500 gold, as are all hero units. And you can see his stats here with full upgrades. 18 attack, 9-5 armor, so much more melee armor heavy than Pierce Armor. 495 HP. You do take anti-cav bonus damage. Reload time of 2. 1.43 movement speed is actually slightly lower than the Haeguan Cavalry and the Tiger Cavalry. And then 30 HP regeneration, so a bit best than Liu Bei, because Liu Bei gives himself also the extra HP regen. As for the aura effect, I can show it off here. It is the exact same 10 tiles as with all of the heroes, so keep that one in mind. As for units, or what it affects, again, only military units, non-siege military units, and non-ships. And the bonus itself is extra attack speed, the Emperor's Decree. As for the exact value, I'm a little bit confused. You can see 1.83 reload time when it normally has a 2 reload time. 1.8 would be a 10% increase, so it's like very slightly less than a 10% increase. Maybe math people out there can figure this riddle out. But yeah, it's around a 10% attack speed increase for Cao Cao for all military units in his aura. No, it does not apply to villagers. Very sad. So, like, a good bonus there, but nothing that's going to be especially insane. And as proof of that, we're going to have the same fight as before, but with Cao Cao and 1 additional paladin on each side. And you can see that it's not going to make too much of a difference. Like, Cao Cao definitely helps, but it's nothing that wild. See, 1.64 reload time, 1.73 reload time. So yeah, you're still able to snowball the fight a little bit better here with your Haeguan Cavalry. And you certainly do better. Cao Cao himself is going to take a very, very long time to go down due to his 9 melee armor. And yeah, although it is a help, it's nothing that's going to be too game-breaking. I think a lot of the people who have issues with this unit, it's just more the conceptual issue of having heroes in the game at all, and I don't think any of the heroes are especially OP. Good, I guess. I mean, for 1,000 resources, that's a lot, but it's definitely a post-imp unit that is... It's a rich man's unit, right? It can help you win fights better that you were already winning, but it's not in itself going to be very cost-efficient versus anything. Anyway, guys, that is the Tiger Cavalry. It's a very good unit, and I think probably the best single unique unit of this entire DLC. I'm a little worried it's going to be too good, just because it's, like, maybe slightly worse than a regular heavy cav in melee combat, but, like, crushingly good against archers, and they just get better and better with every single fight. Maybe I'm overestimating how much you can run back and heal with them, but yeah, I am a little concerned about the Tiger Cavalry, I'm not going to lie. Still, we have one more unit to test in this video, and it is going to be the Xianbei Warrior. Or, I'm sorry, Xianbei Raider. My apologies. So, it is a Cav Archer replacement built at the archery range, and instead of Cav Archers, it costs 60 wood and 25 gold, which is a really interesting cost profile because it's 50% more wood than a regular Cav Archer, but 25 gold is less than half the gold cost. So 15% fewer resources total, but the 60 wood cost means it's really expensive to get going in the mid-game, where wood is a valuable resource because you need it to boom and build more production buildings, build more farms, all that stuff. But in the late game, it's not really much of an issue at all. The 25 gold cost is very helpful in the late game when gold is running low, but gold collects very fast in the mid-game, so I wouldn't necessarily say this is a huge advantage. It's more like it's an advantage in late game and a disadvantage in mid game. Anyway, it says, unique mounted archer with a charged ranged attack. Strong versus infantry, weak versus skirmishers and camels. Now let's do a breakdown of the unit. So its obvious comparison point is going to be to the Cav Archer. And if we just have these units side by side, the Xianbei Raider has 35 HP in Castle Age to the 50 of the Cav Archer, so already 15 less HP than a CA. Although you can imagine that the unit is going to be a bit weaker because it's cheaper, but yeah, we'll get into this later. 4 base attack versus 6. Now 4 attack is really, really low for a unit. It means you're dealing 1 damage to anything that has at least 3 pierce armor guys, which is like most everything. So very, very low attack. Also, bonus damage, you do get 3 versus spearmen and 1 versus infantry. So against infantry, you do get a little bit of that extra bonus, but Cav Archers also get bonus damage versus spearmen, so they still end out ahead. And the 1 extra damage versus infantry is mostly useful against swordsmen. Armor exactly the same at none for either of these units. For range is, again, the exact same. The reload time is 10% faster with the Xianbei Raider, so they do attack faster than a Cav Archer even before Thumb Ring. And the movement speed is exactly the same at 1.4. So, what does the Xianbei Raider do with its charged attack? Now, I honestly think that this is bugged. Well, first, it doesn't work against buildings. It just, like a lot of the charge attacks in the game, it just does not work versus buildings. Versus units, you can see we've got a clump of archers here. I modified one of the archers to have 100 HP so it can stick out. Once I do my charge attack, I click on the unit, it'll fire several arrows at once. That's what the 4 in parentheses is here. However, it did 0 damage to the unit I targeted, which I think is a bug. And then basically the other projectiles, the other, I guess 5 total projectiles, 4 of them hit this archer and 1 of them hit this archer. They all deal 1 damage. So it seems like your charge attack is, it's not so much, okay, you get extra damage, but more like you just spread your damage out, which I don't think should be how the unit works. The charge attack should be a net increase in damage, not at best a side grade. So I do think the unit might be bugged. Either that or there's something I'm not getting. It should always attack the thing you tell it to attack, right? And this archer that I clicked on took 0 damage. So a little concerned about that. Now, keep in mind that the Xianbei Raider doesn't have an elite upgrade. So that's kind of where the 30% extra HP in the Imperial Age comes in. So if we do a side-by-side comparison with a heavy Cav Archer in late game, it has 60 HP with full upgrades versus 80, so 20 less HP than an HCA. Attack is still 4 versus, well, I guess 4 plus 4, and then versus 11, so still 3 less attack, not considering the charge effect. It does have 2 more melee armor thanks to Mingguang Cavalry, so 5-6 armor versus 8-6 armor, but in most situations, 2 more melee armor and 20 less HP is going to basically cancel out at best. You still have that faster reload time, though, after Thumb Ring, 1.53 reload time versus 1.8, so you do attack a fair bit faster, and again, movement speed is exactly the same. Also, in case it isn't obvious, like anything that affects a Cav Archer affects this guy, so Thumb Ring, Parthian Tactics both do, Bloodlines, Husbandry, the Archer upgrades at the Blacksmith, and then Ballistics and Chemistry. So it's everything that you would expect as far as that goes. Still, if we do the charge attack again, it does no damage at all to the thing I'm actually targeting, but then does the extra damage still to the units I'm not targeting. So I'm definitely very confused by all of this. And that one just ended up killing the one archer in front. Yeah, it's a 30-second cooldown, by the way, on the charge attack. Yeah, it definitely is kind of weird. The fast reload time is nice, but you just have such low base attack. That said, with this unit breakdown done, let's do our final tests of the day with the side-by-side comparisons to the Cav Archer line. Alrighty, so considering that the Xianbei Raider is cheaper than the Cav Archer, let's just see how these units fare in a head-to-head fight post-Castle Age upgrade. We have our big initial volley. You can see that against these low-armored targets, the Xianbei Raider's very fast reload time is super good, and we will win this fight decisively. Again, if we do this test now against an equal resource amount of crossbowmen, comparing it to these allied Cav Archers, you can see that the crossbowmen are still going to be effective. Cost-effective, not pop-effective. In terms of difference, though, the crossbowmen with their fast reload time end up doing even better. So 16 left here versus 9 left over here. So I guess against Cav Archers in particular, it can kind of work out if you do equal resources, but you're still not going to win in a pop efficiency war against anything in Castle Age. Also, ease of micro is basically the same between the two units. I guess if you are very good, you can utilize the faster attack speed for the Xianbei Raider, and that's what pro players will, of course, end up doing eventually as they get more used to the unit. But versus these melee units, let's just do a basic DPS test. So the Longswordsman here in the Castle Age is going to have basically an average Pierce armor. Alright, so let's just see between these two types of units, Cav Archers and Xianbei Raiders, who can kill just a blob of swords with the fastest. And as you can see, you're still gonna be doing better the more Pierce armor you have with the Cav Archers. And it's not like swordsmen have a ton of armor. I mean, I guess the difference is pretty close, but the Cav Archers are still gonna be out DPSing, even with slightly fewer numbers. So that doesn't have me super excited about this unit, the Xianbei Raider. And if we switch over to Knights, and of course Knights have pretty decent Pierce armor at 4, this is just 1 more Pierce armor than a swordsman. But I mean, this is where the super low base attack is really gonna hurt. Also, keep in mind that Light Cav have the same base Pierce armor as Knights, so you can just see how much better these CA are doing than are the Xianbei Raiders. Already finished off these units, and it's still gonna take a little bit longer for our unique unit to be effective. And considering that these guys are going to be harder to make than Cav Archers in the mid-game due to the high wood cost, I'm not, like, super stoked on these guys yet, but let's see how the Imperial Age tests go. Alright, so post-Imp, again, I'm really concerned about this low base attack. That doesn't get any better in Imperial Age. And it feels like this still shouldn't really even be very good at all. I mean, just look at this, guys. It is not even remotely close. And yes, I know Paladins have a lot of Pierce armor, and you don't see them all the time, but this is just anything with at least 7 Pierce armor is just taking 1 damage from the Xianbei Raider, and they are the next best thing to completely ineffective. Not great. Now, against a medium Pierce armor unit here with the Champions. So, just like Castle Age, it does get better for this Xianbei Raider, but Cav Archers are still going to be performing, and this is just performing better, and this is going to be the same Pierce armor as the Hussar as well. So it's not like the Xianbei Raiders are doing all that great. Alright, and to finish off here with some low Pierce armor units, you are getting a little bit more value here on the CA and Xianbei Raiders. It's 25 versus 20 and 17. Still, the lack of HP is just such a huge issue. And although you're still going to be pop efficient, it feels like you're paying a lot for getting not a lot out of it. Alright, so very last test here versus HCA. We're back to 6 Pierce armor, so the advantage we enjoyed in Castle Age is likely gone. And again, you do get the extra 2 melee armor over heavy Cav Archers, but or I guess 3 extra melee armor, my bad. It's still 20 less HP. Yeah, I mean, it's not great. So thoughts on the Xianbei Raider? I mean, it's like okay. It kind of feels like a bad Kipchak, which feels like a bad Cav Archer. The Kipchaks at least are much easier to micro. The Xianbei Raiders have the faster reload time, but the attack delay feels very similar, if not exactly the same. So, I mean, like, you'll use it. It's your best archery range unit as the way, but I'm not, like, super hyped for it. It's going to be very, very annoying in late game, though, when they're only 25 gold and you can just keep on spamming them from a gajillion archery ranges. That's definitely where they're going to be at their best. Although that will lead us to our final thoughts here on the way. I mean, they're going to be a playable civilization for sure. I mean, they're not bad, but I'm also not super excited for them like the Shu. They're going to slot in well as a pocket civ in team games. They're probably going to be like a top 6 or 7 pocket civ, just because they do that whole cavalry thing quite effectively. However, in most other settings, it's like, I don't really know why I would want to be picking these guys over another civ. Like, there's a difference between being viable and being interesting or exciting to play, and I don't really see the excitement involved here. That said, if you feel differently, of course, let me know in the comments. They do have a lot of different cavalry units, and if you like that type of unit, they are going to be quite good. And as always, a huge thanks to my Patreon supporters who help make these long-form videos possible, with Dan and Jared in the Great Wolf tier, and then Carolyn, Dieter, Liquid Egg Product, Tribru, and Tandoori Knight in the Dire Wolf tier. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time for our final introduction video, The Woo.